After you've completed your cruise booking, there's a real temptation to sit back, relax, and enjoy the build-up. However, before you get too comfortable, there are a number of things that you really should be thinking of doing now rather than leaving it until the last minute. Doing these things now will save so much stress and pressure as you get closer to your cruise. And if you don't do some of these things now, you're not going to be able to do them in the future. In this video today, I'm going to share with you 10 things that you really should be doing as soon as you book your cruise or in the weeks or months that follow after you make the booking. The sooner you do these things, the better. If you've just found me today for the first time, then I'm Fraser and I use my YouTube channel to share all of my cruise experiences with you to hopefully help you have the best cruise possible when your time to board comes around. If you like the sound of that and you'd like to support my channel, then I would love it if you would click both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. Anyway, let's get started with the first of 10 things that you really should be doing as soon as you book your cruise, and that is to research and buy your cruise insurance. The topic of cruise insurance and travel insurance is a bit of a minefield, but one thing is absolutely clear, and that is that it's absolutely critical that you don't travel without it. If something were to go wrong, heaven forbid, on your cruise, you could be faced with medical bills of tens of thousands of dollars that you would have to find a way to pay for. If something goes wrong before you even get on the ship, for example, the trip is cancelled, the ship is delayed, there are so many things that can happen, then an insurance company will usually make sure that you're not out of pocket. If you're not insured and something goes wrong, things can get pretty nasty pretty quickly. It's important to note that travel insurance and cruise insurance are usually two separate products. When you process a travel insurance purchase, you'll usually be asked whether or not you'll be taking a cruise as part of the trip. If you click yes, they'll then add what's called cruise cover onto your travel insurance package. If you select no, then you won't be covered for the cruise. If when you're going through the various comparison websites, you don't get asked whether or not you're going on a cruise, it's really important that you make sure that whichever policy you opt to purchase covers cruise insurance. For my last few cruises, I've been using the same cruise insurance provider. If you're watching this video from the United Kingdom and you'd like more information on the provider that I use, then just head down to the description of this video where you'll find the provider's name and website address. Number 2, the second thing that you need to be thinking about doing now that you've booked your cruise is booking any pre-cruise flights, travel arrangements, or hotels close to the cruise port. There are a number of reasons why you need to think about doing these things now rather than leaving them much closer to the time. But when we look at flights, it's very, very rare that the closer to the date you get, the lower the airfare will become. In my experience, the closer to the date you get, the more expensive the flight becomes. So if you're seeing a good deal out there at the moment to get on a flight, my general advice would be to jump on that and to book it now. You also have to remember with flights that there are only a certain number of seats on an aircraft. If you are flying into a cruise hub city, for example, Miami, that's a lot of people who will be trying to get on flights from all over the world to meet ships. So you have to make sure that you don't end up being left behind when the demand surge means that all the tickets get booked. When we move to think about hotels, this one is a little bit different in my experience. Although I would say with flights, you should be booking as far in advance as possible, hotels is a little different because you can usually book a hotel under what's called a free cancellation clause. That means that you can book a hotel room so that you've got the safety and the knowledge that you've got a bed to sleep in before the cruise. But if, when the cruise date gets closer, you look online and you see better options or you see cheaper options elsewhere, you've then got the luxury to cancel the room that you'd booked. If I'm cruising out of, for example, Miami or Barcelona, I quite often will get to a few weeks before my cruise and I will cancel the hotel room that I had previously booked in order to secure a much better option, usually at a much cheaper price. I had a great situation in Barcelona a few weeks ago where I had booked a 2-star hotel, and 1 week before the cruise, a 4-star hotel with a rooftop swimming pool became available for a cheaper price. So I was able to cancel my 2-star budget accommodation to save some money by enjoying a night of luxury. I know, sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Number 3, as soon as you book your cruise, take your mobile phone and download your cruise line app if they have one. This is so important because I meet so many people who don't download the app until they get to the port. They then find themselves in a situation where the port doesn't have Wi-Fi, they have no mobile coverage, and then they're on the ship and they haven't been able to download the app. The other issue is that even if you do have cell or mobile coverage on board, you can be fighting with 3, 4, 5,000 other passengers just on your one cruise ship to also get a good signal. That means that speeds can be incredibly slow or incredibly inconsistent. So my advice is, as soon as you book the cruise, jump on the app store that's relevant for your phone provider and download the app. You can also then do things like book speciality dining, you can often book shore excursions, and so many other things through the mobile app before you head to the ship. Number 4, you knew this one was coming as soon as I finished that last sentence. Book any high-demand shore excursions as early as possible after you make your cruise booking. When I say high-demand shore excursions, I'm referring to the bucket list items that so many people will want to do when they're on your cruise. This will apply more to some parts of the world than others. One region that is particularly famous for these high-demand excursions is Alaska. If you want to, for example, visit Skagway and go on the world-famous train ride into the mountains, then it's going to be a very good idea for you to book that as soon as you can. In my own experience, I went to Skagway and I couldn't get on the train because all of the shore excursions had already been booked before I actually got onto the ship. So if there are any high-demand excursions or things that you are absolutely desperate to see as part of your cruise experience, then get online and book those excursions as early as you can after making your cruise booking. Number 5, order any cruise purchases as soon as you can after making your booking. Now, with this one, I'm not referring to drinks packages or speciality dining or excursions. What I'm referring to here are the physical things that you will want to take on the trip with you. Think about things like international travel adapters. Think about magnetic hooks for the cabin. Think about the matching t-shirts that you want to buy for your whole family. There are so many things that you'll want to take on your cruise, maybe even packing cubes, for example. Now, I've actually compiled an Amazon store which has got so many things in it that you might want to take on your cruise, the majority of which will just make your experience so much simpler. If you'd like to check out my Amazon store, then head down to the description of this video where you'll find a link to take you over there now. Number 6, now that your cruise booking is confirmed, you'll want to do some research about the actual ship that you're travelling on. Nowadays, cruise ships can be absolutely enormous. I've been on cruise ships that have 18, 19, 20, sometimes even more decks on board. And if I don't do a little bit of research before I head to the port, I would feel completely overwhelmed as soon as I stepped on board because I wouldn't have a clue where to start when it comes to experiencing a ship of that size. Now, you've already started your research. You're already on YouTube. You're already watching videos like this one, which is great. But you should also think about heading over to watch things like cabin tours, ship tours, to-do guides. There are so many different styles of content that you can find on YouTube. You can also find various websites and loads of blogs that will tell you even more about the cruise experience. I also have my own website, which is at www.FRASERATSEA.com, where I share my experiences with you in written form. So you might want to head over there and check that out as well. But yes, number 6, think very specifically about the ship that you're travelling on and do some basic research. Number 7, think about social media. And thinking specifically about Facebook, you might want to search for your cruise that you've booked and join the Facebook group. Now that will then provide you with a source of information that is very specific to the cruise that you're travelling on. Some people hear this advice and they think, oh my goodness, I can't think of anything worse than everybody recognising me from the Facebook group once I get onto the ship, and then maybe feeling trapped, or maybe feeling like you can't then avoid these people. However, don't worry. With Facebook groups that are specific to cruises, you can be as active or as passive as you like. And in fact, the majority of Facebook groups that I join, I very rarely say anything before I then get on the cruise. What I find them particularly useful for is making sure that I don't miss out on anything that I can do before the cruise. For example, if you cruise with a cruise line like Virgin Voyages, who open up dining reservations a set number of days before the cruise, there will always be someone in that Facebook group who will say, hey, remember, tomorrow you can book your dining. Or after they book it, they might come on and ask, how did everybody get on? Did you get the restaurants booked that you wanted to try? That then is a prompt for me that means I can then jump on and make sure that I don't miss out. If you do like to get involved in Facebook groups, then I've also seen it before where there are gift exchanges, there are drinks meetups once everyone gets on the ship. So it could also be a really nice way to meet people once you get on board, especially if you're travelling as part of a smaller group, or maybe you're travelling solo. Now let's move on to number 8. The 8th thing that you really should start doing as soon as possible after you book your cruise is research your ports of call. Now don't worry, I'm not saying that you need to dive into intricate levels of detail about each of your cruise ports, but what you really should think about doing at an absolute minimum is reading into where you're going and what the top things to do or see are at each of those places. That way, when the ship pulls into port in the morning, you're not going to be stressing out trying to get on the internet, trying to figure out where you should go and at what time. This can be particularly important if you're cruising in places like Europe, where there will be a lot of cultural traditions that will take place during the day. I recently took a cruise where they had a changing of the guard outside one of the royal palaces. My pre-cruise research meant that I knew exactly what time that would happen, but the majority of people I was meeting on board the cruise ship I was travelling on, they had no idea, and therefore they missed out. Now, you're already on YouTube, similar to my point that I mentioned earlier about ship research. You can do so much port research right here on YouTube. Just search, for example, the city you're going to, followed by cruise vlog, and you'll probably find someone's been there before and they would love to show you around. So yes, we covered earlier that you should do some ship research, but for this one, you also want to think about researching the ports. Number 9, and this one is so important, because imagine if you've done all of these things and then you get closer to your cruise date and your cruise gets unexpectedly cancelled. Yes, it would be very annoying, wouldn't it? The 9th thing that you should look at doing as soon as you book your cruise is diarising the final payment date. The final payment date will usually be a number of months away from the cruise date. In my experience, I've found that around the 12-week before the cruise point is when final payment will be due. But it is worth mentioning that this final payment date will vary across pretty much every single cruise line out there. So be sure to check for your cruise line so that you don't end up in a situation where your cruise gets cancelled. Now, what is a final payment date? You might find when you make your cruise booking that you can secure your cruise with a deposit of, for example, $100 or £50 as an example. As you then get closer to the cruise date, the remaining amount of money for your cruise fare will be due. If you pay that up front, or if you pay that on the final payment date, that's absolutely fine. But what will often happen if that money doesn't make it to the cruise line is that your cruise will be cancelled. That leads us really nicely onto point number 10. The 10th thing that you should look at doing as soon as possible after you confirm your cruise booking is check all of your cruise documents to make sure that everything is as you would expect it to be. That means when you get your cruise confirmation into your email, check things like the embarkation date, the disembarkation date, the embarkation port, even the ship name, because whether you've booked it yourself or through a travel agent, there's always a degree of human error that could be possible there. Imagine if you go to the cruise port to board your ship and you realise that you accidentally clicked the wrong year when you made your booking. That would be pretty embarrassing, right? Now, I've had it in the past where I've gone to check in for my cruise a couple of days before embarkation, and I've been absolutely shocked to find that my cruise has been cancelled. Now, in that one example, what happened was that the travel agency I booked through hadn't transferred the correct amount of money to the cruise line, therefore resulting in my booking being cancelled because, as per the previous point, if your cruise fare isn't paid, the cruise line will obviously cancel your booking. Now, that situation led to an indescribable amount of stress for me in a place that I was completely unfamiliar with the day before boarding a cruise ship. I hadn't checked my documents because at that time I was spending a lot of time on cruises. I had just got off my previous ship and I was in a routine of just quickly checking in for the next ship the day before I'd go to the port. So this is one thing that the more cruises I've taken, the more I've learned how critically important it is to make sure that everything is in order. So it's worth checking your paperwork straight after booking the cruise when it comes into your email. And also, if you then make a final payment, just make sure that everything's reached the cruise line okay to avoid any stress right before the cruise. And that's it. That's 10 things that I think you really need to be looking at doing as soon as possible after you book your cruise. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, it would be great if you would think about supporting my channel, as I mentioned earlier, by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. If you'd like to join me for another video and you'd like to hear more cruise tips, then why not join me over in this video? Here, I tell you about some of the things that it's so important that you do with your mobile phone or your cell phone when you cruise in order to avoid some pretty huge roaming charges. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you over there.